Have you ever noticed how you can walk into a room, say nothing at all, and still feel someone's eyes burning into you? You didn't insult them. You didn't compete. You didn't even speak. Yet somehow you've become the target. Why? Because your peace exposes their chaos. Your quiet confidence reflects everything they're not, and that mirror terrifies them. Sometimes it's not your mistakes that draw hate, it's your presence. You're not weak. You're a living reminder of the potential they abandoned. Your growth unsettles their comfort. Your calm shakes their ego. And in their minds, the only way to feel powerful again is to try to rattle yours. What if the real reason you're under attack isn't about what you've done, but about what you've become? The person who's done the inner work, who walks with quiet self-respect, and who no longer needs validation. To them, you're not just a person. You're a threat, a mirror showing everything they wish they were. They don't hate you because you've done something wrong. They hate you because your presence reveals their inadequacy, and their ego simply can't handle it. They don't want to destroy you outright. They want to break your focus, shake your silence, and disrupt your clarity, because that's the only way they can feel powerful again. But here's the truth. You don't have to argue. You don't have to explain, and you don't have to lower yourself to their level. The greatest revenge is a Stoic strategy of silence. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to outsmart them, without raising your voice, without losing your peace, and without ever letting them see you sweat. It often begins subtly. A backhanded compliment, a sarcastic remark when you're not looking, a cold shoulder. You're finally doing well and you ask yourself, what did I do? But the answer is liberating. You didn't do anything wrong. You simply showed up as yourself. The root of their behavior isn't your actions. It's their insecurity. Most people don't attack others because they're evil. They do it because they're insecure. And you became a mirror, a reflection of what they're not, what they couldn't become, what they gave up on long ago. People carrying unhealed wounds, unresolved shame, or deep-rooted self-doubt look for someone to project it onto. And the person who becomes the target is usually the one who's done the inner work. Someone who walks with quiet confidence, emotional intelligence, and a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on validation. To them, you're not just another individual. You're a living reminder of everything they've settled for while you've kept evolving. Psychologists call this projection. A person who feels weak inside accuses others of arrogance. Someone who feels like a failure secretly resents those who succeed. A person who has no control over their life tries to control others. They look at you and think, even if only subconsciously, how dare they feel peaceful while I'm at war with myself? Instead of fixing their chaos, they try to disturb yours. Here's a real-life example. Imagine you're in a team meeting. You speak calmly, offer an idea, and people notice. You weren't showing off. You were simply competent. But one coworker starts undermining you. They interrupt you, roll their eyes when you speak, or make offhand jokes at your expense in the hallway. Why? Because in that one moment, your calm confidence triggered their hidden insecurity. They don't actually hate you. They hate the way you don't need approval to feel valuable. For those who survive on constant external validation, your self-assurance feels like a direct threat. They don't necessarily want to see you collapse completely. What they want is your disruption. It's not always about destroying you. Sometimes it's about shaking you just enough to make you stumble. They want you to second-guess yourself, to react emotionally, because that reaction gives them power. If they can get under your skin, they feel relevant again. If they can make you question yourself, they suddenly feel superior. That's why you must understand. You're being targeted not because you lack strength, but because you're emotionally unshakable. And that frustrates those who live in constant reaction. This is the irony. Emotional intelligence can make you the perfect target, especially if you haven't yet learned how to protect it. Why is that? Because you are empathetic. You try to understand people. You assume the best. You give second chances. But emotional intelligence without psychological boundaries is like a magnet for manipulators. They interpret your kindness as weakness. They mistake your silence for surrender. They believe that because you don't retaliate, you don't notice what they're doing. But that illusion is about to end. The first Stoic move is this: see without reacting. The first step in outsmarting them is to understand them. Don't take it personally. Don't lower your energy to match their chaos. Instead, observe with clarity, with control. When someone targets you, it's often the clearest sign that you've stepped into a version of yourself that no longer blends into mediocrity. They attack what they cannot reach. They belittle what they secretly admire. They try to disrupt what they don't understand. And your role is not to retaliate, but to rise in silence. So the next time someone suddenly targets you, pause. Don't react. Instead, remind yourself, this is a reflection of who they are, not who I am. Because once you see the game clearly, you no longer have to play it. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into the hidden ways you trigger their insecurity without even saying a word, and how your quiet energy holds more power than any argument they could ever throw at you. It's not always your words that provoke people. Sometimes it's your silence, your posture, your energy, your refusal to shrink. You walk into a room, and before you even speak, someone already dislikes you. Not because of who you are, but because of how they feel about themselves when you show up. You become a mirror they cannot escape. And here's a harsh truth. Most people are not searching for inspiration. They're searching for comfort, even if that comfort is built on self-deception. So when you appear as someone who has done the inner work, who walks with clarity, who no longer chases approval, you don't inspire them, you expose them. You become a mirror, and not the flattering kind. You don't validate their excuses. You remind them of the potential they abandoned long ago, and that reminder hurts. Emotional intelligence feels threatening to the emotionally unstable. You remain calm when they lash out. You choose peace over pettiness. You listen without needing to interrupt. You move with purpose, not with noise. And because of that, those who rely on chaos to feel in control suddenly feel invisible in front of you. They can't manipulate you. They can't provoke you. They can't figure out why their tactics don't work on you. And instead of reflecting, they double down. They attack. Think of it as a living contrast. Quiet confidence versus loud insecurity. Picture this. You're in a friend group where one person always dominates the conversation. They crave attention, constant validation, every laugh, every nod. But then you arrive. You don't need the spotlight. You speak less, but when you do, your words land with weight. You don't perform. You simply exist. Suddenly, their dominance feels forced, almost like an act. And they hate that feeling. So they throw out comments like, "Why are you so quiet? Why are you so serious? Come on, loosen up." But what they're really saying is, "You're making me feel exposed just by staying composed." Their inner logic is simple. If you don't shrink, I can't feel tall. They don't need to crush you. They just need to interrupt you, to break your rhythm, to pull you off center. Because when you move with calm purpose, it shines a spotlight on their frantic lack of direction. This is the paradox. You trigger them precisely because you're not competing. You trigger them because you're not reacting. You trigger them because you're not even playing their game. And that is your power. Your calmness is louder than their noise. Your stillness more disruptive than their chaos. This is the quiet threat of inner power. When you carry real power inside you, it becomes obvious, not in your volume, but in your presence. People feel it. And those with no power of their own feel unsettled, because they can't manipulate energy they don't understand. They can't read you. They can't provoke someone who doesn't need to win. And they can't control someone who isn't trying to control them back. That's why your quiet confidence is such a threat. The most dangerous thing you can do to them is nothing. This is the irony. You don't have to attack. You don't have to defend. You don't even have to acknowledge them. And still, it's enough to rattle them. Why? Because when someone depends on validation to feel real, and you withhold both praise and reaction, they start to feel like they're disappearing. That's what makes you dangerous in their eyes. You see them. You understand them, and yet you still refuse to give them access to your peace. This is where Stoic reflection becomes your shield. Let your energy speak. The Stoics taught, control what you can, observe what you can't, and protect what you must. You don't need to fix their insecurity. You're not responsible for how your peace makes them uncomfortable. Your only job is to stay centered in your purpose, your discipline, and your truth. And that alone, without a single word, will shake those who've built their identity on noise. So the next time someone tries to poke, provoke, or pull you off center, remember this. Your silence doesn't make you small. It makes you powerful. Your calm doesn't mean you didn't notice. It means you've already decided they're not worth your peace. In the next chapter, we'll break down exactly how they test you, the manipulation tactics they use to get under your skin, and how to stay one step ahead with pure psychological precision. Once they realize they can't intimidate you with presence, they escalate. Not with logic, but with manipulation. Not with truth, but with tactics. They'll begin to test you, press the right buttons, create friction just to see if you'll lose your center. And make no mistake, every move is a trap. The psychology behind their tests is simple. Insecure people can't stand emotional neutrality. It makes them feel invisible, so they poke at your stillness, hoping to awaken something reactive. Anger, defensiveness, self-doubt. That's what they're after. Their mindset is simple. If I can get a reaction, I still have power over you. Their ultimate goal isn't to destroy your life, it's to disturb your peace. Because deep down, they know your peace is where your true power lives. Tactic 1. Passive-aggressive provocation. They rarely confront you directly. Instead, they hide behind sarcasm, backhanded compliments, or subtle jabs. You'll hear things like, "Oh, look who suddenly thinks they're too good for us." Or, "Must be nice living in your perfect little bubble." But what they're really saying is, "I feel insecure in your presence, and I need to pull you down so I can feel level again." Remember this. A person who is whole doesn't need to bruise others. Stay silent. Don't play their game. Tactic 2. Guilt-tripping disguised as care. Another common move is manipulation dressed up as concern. They'll say, "You've changed lately," or "You're not as fun anymore." "Why are you so distant these days?" "We miss the old you." Translation? "We miss the version of you that was easier to control." They want you to feel guilty for growing, to shrink back into the box they once kept you in. But here's the truth. Growth is not betrayal. And you don't owe familiarity to people who refuse to evolve. Tactic 3. Public triggers. Sometimes they'll try to provoke you in front of others, not to reveal truth, but to control the story. They may laugh at you subtly during a group conversation. They may loudly disagree just to discredit your voice. They may bring up your past to stir shame. And if you snap, they win. Because in that moment, you look like the irrational one. But when you hold your frame, when you refuse to perform for their dysfunction, they crumble. Your self-control exposes their chaos. The Stoic response. Let them test you and let them fail. This is the shift. You don't fight their game. You allow their game to reveal itself. Every time you don't flinch, don't explain, don't engage, you send a silent but powerful message. You no longer have access to my emotional world. That is psychological boundaries at their highest level. This is why emotional intelligence is a superpower. Most people think emotional intelligence is only about empathy, but it's more than that. It's emotional discipline. It's the ability to feel triggered and not act on it. The power to observe chaos without becoming chaos. The strength to walk away, not out of fear, but out of self-worth. They expect you to erupt. They expect you to defend. Give them neither. And watch their game collapse. A real-life Stoic strategy. Win without engaging. Picture this. You're at work. A colleague constantly interrupts you in meetings, subtly undermining your competence. The old you might have clapped back, raised your voice, tried to prove your worth. But now, you let them speak. You stay calm, and you deliver your value anyway. You build your credibility in silence. Slowly, others start to notice the contrast. Their drama against your composure, their noise against your results. Without raising your voice, you've repositioned yourself as the stronger force. That's how Stoics outsmart chaos. Not by making louder noise, but by embodying impenetrable calm. Let this truth anchor deep. People will test your emotional control right up until the moment they realize they can't break it. And when that moment comes, they stop. Not because they've changed, but because you've made it clear. They no longer matter. They'll move on to someone easier to provoke because that's all they ever wanted. Reaction, not resolution. And when you refuse to give it, you don't just win. You end the game. There's a kind of power that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply holds the line. It's called silent resistance. And when mastered, it is more disruptive than any heated confrontation. Silence is not weakness, it is mastery. They expect you to react, to explain yourself, to fire back, because that's what they would do. But when you remain still, when you don't flinch, don't defend, don't return fire, you break the cycle. You interrupt the pattern. In that moment, you disarm manipulation entirely. Why? Because your silence tells them everything they need to know, far more than words ever could. It says, I see you, I understand you, and I still choose peace over performance. That is the essence of emotional mastery. Why is it so powerful? Because people who thrive on control depend on your need to respond. The moment you stop giving them that, they panic. When you don't react, they lose leverage. When you don't justify, they lose their grip on the narrative. When you refuse to stoop, they suddenly feel exposed, because now their chaos echoes back at them in silence. That's why silence isn't avoidance, it's strategy. It's dominance without noise. Real-life example. When silence speaks louder than words. Think back to a time when someone insulted you, expecting you to bite back. But instead, you simply looked at them calmly and walked away. What happened next? They got louder, angrier, more desperate, because you didn't play the role they had written for you. You didn't validate their ego. You didn't meet their dysfunction. You left them alone with their own reflection. And for insecure people, that is the scariest place to be. Silence as spiritual discipline. In Stoic philosophy, silence is not cowardice. It is clarity in motion. You don't hold back because you're weak. You stay silent because you've already decided. This is not worthy of my energy. That is spiritual discipline, the ability to remain true to your values, even when your ego begs to be unleashed. When you can look chaos in the eye and still choose stillness, you've entered a state of quiet confidence, the kind that shakes louder than screams. Silence builds boundaries. There's something sacred about not explaining yourself. Silence draws a line. It protects your peace. It reclaims your time and energy. Every time you explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you cheapen your truth. Silence is not the absence of words. It's the presence of standards. It says, "I don't owe clarity to those who profit from confusion. I don't fight to be seen by people who are committed to blindness." That is not arrogance. It is self-respect. And here's the part that breaks them. The enemy doesn't know what to do with silence. When you speak, they can twist your words. When you fight, they can provoke. But when you say nothing, they are forced to deal with themselves. Your silence becomes a mirror in their hands. It forces them to feel the very discomfort they were trying to dump onto you. And for many, that is unbearable. The Stoic shift. From reacting to withdrawing strategically. Your silence doesn't mean you didn't notice. It means you are no longer available. And here's the distinction. Shutting down is fear, but shutting the door is self-preservation. When you walk away with dignity, you're not abandoning the battle. You're refusing to fight on their terms. And in doing so, you win a deeper war, the war to protect your inner peace. Let this truth settle in. You don't need to be louder. You need to be clearer in your silence. You don't need to win the argument. You need to win your freedom. And if they think your silence makes you weak, let them. Because that illusion is their downfall, not yours. Let them say you're cold. Let them invent stories. You don't need to defend your growth to those who refuse to grow. Instead, let silence speak for you. Let peace guard your heart. Let your absence deliver the loudest message. Because detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop participating in your own disturbance. It means you stop feeding energy to the very things that drain your soul. And the most strategic choice you can make is to disengage from people who survive on your attention. The goal isn't to win the fight. The goal is to step out of the arena altogether. Some people aren't looking for resolution. They're looking for reaction. They don't want to fix the problem. They want to drag you into the same emotional chaos they live in, because if you're both drowning, at least they're not alone. The wisest response? Don't swim in their ocean. Build your own shore. You don't defeat a manipulator by outplaying them. You win by refusing to show up to their game at all. That is the essence of strategic detachment. Psychological strategy. Starve the drama. Every toxic interaction carries a hidden contract. One side provokes, the other side responds. And the more emotional your response, the more control the provoker feels. But when you withdraw from the game, when you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop proving, you rip that contract in half. They can scream into the void. They can slander you in the dark. But without your participation, their story has no oxygen. That's how you outsmart them. Not by fighting harder, but by feeding less. The art of becoming unreachable. Detachment is not about being cold or uncaring. It's about becoming selectively accessible. It's about deciding who deserves access to your emotions, your attention, your energy. You don't block them out of pettiness. You block them because your peace is sacred. You don't go silent out of immaturity. You go silent because you've matured beyond pointless conversations. This is emotional intelligence in action. The ability to protect your focus from emotional parasites. Real life. Example, the power of withdrawal. Imagine someone constantly criticizing you not to help you improve, but to chip away at your confidence. They smile while doing it. They say it's just being honest. Now you could confront them. You could explain how much it hurts. You could beg them to stop. But true power looks different. You stop engaging. You limit interactions. You stop inviting them into your space, physically and emotionally. You live your truth without seeking permission, without offering apology. And over time they feel it. They feel that energetic door close. And there's nothing more terrifying to a manipulator than realizing they no longer have access. Detachment as high-performance discipline. Here's what most people miss. Detachment isn't just an emotional move. It's a productivity move. Every moment you spend in drama, in overthinking, in trying to decode someone who never cared to understand you, is a moment stolen from your goals, your peace, and your growth. Detachment means you finally choose alignment over attention. And the more you practice it, the more magnetic you become. Why? Because people are drawn to those who don't need them. People respect those who don't explain themselves. That's quiet confidence. That's self-mastery. That's what the Stoics called being untouchable in spirit, spiritual detachment. It's not the end, it's elevation. When you walk away from someone or something toxic, it's not rejection, it's redirection back to yourself. You stop begging for validation. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop playing the fixer in a story that was never yours to repair. Instead, you create space. You breathe again. You reclaim your focus. And with it, you reclaim your power. Detachment is not closing your heart. It's finally opening it to something higher. So if you've been wondering what to say, what to do, how to respond, try this instead. Say nothing, do nothing, and focus everything on building the kind of life they can't disrupt, because they're no longer invited into it. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. And in that clarity, you win. Inner peace is not a gift handed to you. It's a structure you build, reinforce, and fiercely protect. And like any fortress, it needs walls, gates, and guards. Because if you don't protect your peace, someone else will occupy it, and they won't pay rent. Wall 1. Boundaries that don't flinch. The first wall is built of clear, non-negotiable boundaries. Not the kind you shout, but the kind you embody. You don't respond to every message. You don't explain every decision. You don't entertain every invitation, especially the emotionally charged ones. Why? Because access to your attention is a privilege, not a right. Boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about preservation. The person who protects their time, energy, and focus protects their life. Wall 2. Mastering emotional triggers. You can't control other people, but you can control what reaches you. The second layer of your fortress is self-awareness. Knowing your triggers, understanding how manipulation works, and choosing to pause, not react. This is emotional intelligence at its highest form. Feeling everything, responding to almost nothing. When they can't push your buttons, they lose control of the game. Wall 3. Energy gatekeeping. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Not every problem is yours to solve. Not every crisis is an invitation for you to jump in and fix. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to validate everyone's opinion about your path. Be kind, but be selective, because your energy is currency, and some people are emotional pickpockets. If your peace feels constantly disturbed, it's time to audit who has keys to your mental space. Wall 4. Say less, see more. The more you speak, the more they learn how to attack. The less you reveal, the more protected you remain. This isn't about being secretive. It's about being strategic. Learn to observe without absorbing. Learn to witness without responding. Let silence be your filter. Let actions be your answer. This is where quiet confidence becomes your armor, not flashy but indestructible. Wall 5. A ritual of stillness. Your fortress needs time to reset. Noise is everywhere. People will pull at your attention. Opinions will flood your mind. That's why you need spiritual discipline. Morning silence before the world starts shouting. Evening reflection before sleep sedates you. And space between reaction and decision. Create space to hear your own thoughts before someone else fills your mind with theirs. This is your sacred reset. Wall 6. Access control. Not everyone gets in. Here's a hard truth. You can love people and still limit their access. Some people only show up when they need something. Some knock only to steal energy. Some pretend to care but only want to compare. Give access based on alignment, not history. Give trust based on actions, not words. Your peace is a vault, and not everyone deserves the code. If you've been feeling constantly drained, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've been leaving the gates open too long. Now it's time to build, brick by brick, standard by standard. Silence, boundaries, focus, clarity. That's how you create a life where you don't just protect your peace, you live inside it. At some point, you stop asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" And you start asking, "Why am I still watching?" Because their chaos isn't your concern anymore. Their dysfunction is not your responsibility. Their noise is not your soundtrack. The moment you stop chasing to be understood and start chasing your true purpose, everything shifts. Chaos is not a message, it's a distraction. You were never meant to fix them. You were meant to outgrow the pattern. But here's what usually happens. They hurl chaos your way. Insults, drama, guilt trips. Anything to make you drop what you're building and get pulled back into their storm. Why? Because your progress threatens their stagnation. They can't keep up, so they try to pull you back. Not because they're ahead of you, but because they've already quit on themselves, and they can't stand to watch you keep moving forward. This is why your focus is your most valuable asset. The most powerful currency in the world isn't money, it's attention. Where your focus goes, your life flows. Where your energy goes, your future grows. And what you choose to ignore, it eventually dies of starvation. The fastest way to disarm a manipulator is not with confrontation. It's by becoming too busy building something they can't interrupt. You don't need to respond. You need to refocus. Real-life example. Creation over distraction. Imagine you're working hard on something that matters. Maybe your business, your health, or your healing. Suddenly, they show up out of nowhere with snide remarks, old accusations, or clever attempts to bait you into arguments. What do? You don't pause your progress for their petty games. Let them talk. Let them gossip. Let them misunderstand you. Because while they're stuck on the sidelines watching, you're building a life they'll never have access to again. That's what a high-performance mindset looks like. Eyes locked on the mission, not the noise. Stop trying so hard to be understood. Start becoming unstoppable. The desire to be understood is natural, but it's also a trap. When you constantly explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you delay your destiny just to manage their discomfort. Let it go. They don't need to understand your silence. They don't need to respect your boundaries. They don't need to support your growth. All they need to do is watch you walk away and stay gone. You don't need permission to evolve. What you need is the discipline to stay focused. The Stoic strategy. Let the storm rage. Your job is not to silence the storm outside. Your job is to remain grounded while it rages. Don't retaliate. Don't react. Don't re-enter the battlefield you've already escaped. Instead, build. Sharpen your skills. Strengthen your health. Deepen your faith. Reinforce your vision. Let their chaos bounce off the walls of the fortress you've built. Let their drama become background noise against the soundtrack of your disciplined focus. Inner power is born from prioritization. The truth is, you cannot be powerful and distracted at the same time. You cannot rise while wasting energy in arguments. You cannot grow while chasing explanations. Your next level requires full focus, and that means protecting your energy like your life depends on it. Because it does. People will feel offended. Let them. People will say you've changed. Say thank you. People will try to bait you. Stay centered, stay working, stay free. The moment you stop reacting is the moment you start rising. The moment you stop chasing noise is the moment clarity finds you. They can keep the drama. You'll take the results. They can play their games. You'll build your empire in silence. Because at the end of the day, you don't owe them a response. You owe yourself a legacy, and that is the moment they dread the most. It's the moment when their words no longer work. Their guilt no longer lands. Their silence no longer shakes you. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But for them, it's devastating. Because in that moment, they finally realize they've lost access to your mind. Their power was never in who they were. It was in what you gave them. Manipulators don't thrive because they're strong. They thrive because you were once vulnerable. Because you explained. Because you cared. Because you believed they could change. But when you stop reacting, when your emotional energy is no longer available, they lose their power source. The strongest form of self-defense is no longer being available to be controlled, and their reactions will tell you everything. When they sense the shift, they panic, but silently. At first, they pretend not to care. Then they escalate. You'll notice they try to bait you with fake kindness. They push harder with subtle disrespect. They test you with old patterns you've already outgrown. But nothing lands. Nothing moves you. And that's when the collapse begins. Because the person they used to play no longer exists. Psychological reversal. The mirror flips. Now you've become the mirror. But this time it doesn't reflect insecurity. It reflects indifference, peace, detachment, strength. They see it and it stings. Because if you don't need them, if you don't react to them, if you're no longer accessible, then the truth they feared most becomes undeniable. They never really had power. They only had proximity. And now they have neither. Your growth becomes their breakdown. They can't handle the new you because the new you doesn't ask for understanding. The new you doesn't seek their validation. The new you doesn't beg for closure. You've closed the door yourself. And that's the part they never expected. They thought you'd always come back. You always did before. But now you're silent, focused, unreachable. The version of you that tolerated their chaos simply doesn't exist anymore. Real-life example. The emotional power shift. Picture this. Someone who once ghosted you now sends a "just checking in" message. Someone who disrespected you in public now tries to casually reconnect. Someone who mocked your growth now stalks your progress in silence. Why? Because they feel it. The energy has shifted. You're no longer orbiting around them, and their world feels colder because of it. And deep down, they know they can never come back the same way. They can't unsee your strength. The truth is, once you've shown them that you can detach without hate, that you can walk away without slamming the door, that you can grow in silence without proving a point, they will never look at you the same again. They may pretend. They may deny it. But every time they see your name, they remember the one person they couldn't control. And that memory haunts them. What they feel but never admit, regret, wrapped in ego. Shame projected as blame. Longing, disguised as indifference. They won't say it, but they feel it. Your peace feels like punishment. Your silence sounds like a verdict. Your elevation feels like revenge. And yet you're not even trying. You're just living. That's what makes it hurt more. They didn't lose you when they hurt you. They lost you when you healed without them. They didn't lose power when they attacked. They lost it when you stopped responding. Let them sit in the silence. Let them wrestle with the version of you they will never reach again. Because once you're free, you don't go back. Not to explain. Not to fix. Not to entertain their chaos. You simply keep walking forward while they are left standing still, wondering what happened. There's a kind of revenge that doesn't need noise. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't even require you to speak a single word. It's the kind of revenge that speaks only through your evolution. And for those who once tried to break you, that is the most unbearable punishment of all. What is Stoic revenge? It's not revenge fueled by hate. It's not revenge that drags you down to their level. It's revenge that transcends the battlefield entirely. You don't respond. You don't explain. You don't justify. You rise. Your comeback isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that they never had the power they thought they did. You become the version of yourself they never saw coming. They expected you to collapse. They expected you to beg for closure, to plead for validation. They expected their absence to destroy you. But instead, you got focused. You grew stronger. You became silent, deliberate, and strategic. Now you're living the life they never imagined you could build without them. And that is what eats away at them day after day. Revenge isn't showing them you're angry. Revenge is showing them you're done. Your discipline becomes their defeat. Every time you wake up early instead of staying in bed consumed by sadness. Every time you step into the gym instead of pressing send on a long emotional message. Every time you work in silence instead of trying to be understood, you're practicing Stoic revenge. Because while they wanted to trap you in the same emotional loops, you broke the cycle. You used the pain not to destroy yourself, but to refine yourself. The philosophy behind it. Stoicism teaches, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius. This means, don't become who they are. Don't let their hatred turn into your bitterness. Don't let their chaos become your character. You rise above, not because you think you're better, but because you've seen the cost of staying down. Real-life application. Transforming pain into power. Imagine you were betrayed, lied to, humiliated, discarded. The old version of you would have tried to expose them, chase explanations, or win the crowd to your side. But now, you say nothing. You post nothing. You keep working, relentlessly in silence. Your mindset sharpens. Your habits strengthen. Your spirit stabilizes. And months later, they stumble across your progress. And suddenly, it hits them. You didn't fall. You leveled up. And now they're stuck with themselves, the version that was never ready for the version of you that exists today. They created the very shift they never saw coming. You no longer argue, you disappear. You no longer prove, you embody. You no longer seek revenge, because you've become the revenge. They didn't expect you to rise. They expected you to react. But instead of shouting back, you became unreachable. And for manipulators, that's the one thing they can't spin, the one thing they can't control. Your silence has become the verdict. Your peace is no longer just a feeling. It becomes a message the world can't ignore. Your progress stands like a mirror, and they can't stand the reflection. They tried to break you, to keep you small, but you healed, and in that healing you became unstoppable. They thought your silence was weakness. Now it is the very presence they fear. So let them sit with the weight of their own actions. Let them replay every choice in the quiet of their own mind. Because the truth is simple. They will never touch the version of you that once existed. That chapter is closed. And you? You're not chasing revenge. You're living redemption. And isn't that the most powerful revenge of all? There is a force greater than aggression, sharper than revenge, stronger than control. It is the power of someone who moves only by purpose. This is the person who doesn't chase, doesn't plead, doesn't explain. They simply live in alignment, and that alignment makes them untouchable. Emotional intelligence becomes your armor. Most people are tossed like leaves in the wind, blown by opinions, insults, moods, and triggers. Their worth rises and falls with the approval of others. But you're different. You've trained yourself to feel without falling apart, to listen without absorbing, to care without losing control. That's not apathy. That's power. That's emotional intelligence. Peace is not the absence of chaos. It is the refusal to let chaos take root inside you. And self-mastery? That is the new invincibility. The modern world teaches domination over others, but Stoic wisdom whispers something higher. Master yourself. Because if they cannot control your emotions, your focus, your identity, then they cannot touch you. You are no longer triggered, no longer manipulated, no longer reactive. You've taken back the remote control they once had over your nervous system. That is not just freedom. That is true invincibility. You don't build walls, you build standards. Being untouchable doesn't mean being cold. It means being clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about what you allow. Clear about what deserves your time, your energy, your emotional investment. You don't scream, "I've changed." You simply move differently, and your energy speaks louder than words. Inner peace is the ultimate power. Victory isn't found in defeating them. It's in defeating the old version of yourself that once needed their validation. That is why you no longer seek revenge. You no longer chase closure. You no longer look back. You've become the calm in the storm, centered, focused, whole. A person at peace cannot be provoked. A person who knows their worth cannot be baited. And when they return, as they always do, whether with apologies, with nostalgia, or with confusion dressed as care, you will not react. Because you now see with clarity. You've done the work. You've mastered silence. You've crossed the bridge and burned the blueprint behind you. Their access has expired. Their tactics have no effect. Their presence has no weight. You've elevated into a version of yourself that does not flinch, because it no longer needs to. That is the true Stoic outcome. You are untouchable. Not because you are cold, but because you are unshakably aware. Aware of your energy. Aware of your purpose. Aware of your worth. And that awareness makes you immune to nonsense, to manipulation, to the chaos of low vibrations. This has always been the heart of Stoicism. Not power through force, but power through restraint, through philosophy, through radical self-control. Final word, from survival to sovereignty. You used to merely survive among toxic people. Now you thrive far beyond their reach. You used to respond from pain. Now you act from power. You used to beg for peace. We spoke about how true power isn't found in revenge or proving yourself. It's found in mastering your own self. And now we arrive at your final form, the person you've become. This is your ultimate state. Stoic, silent, strategic, unbothered, untouchable. You were once the target. You were once tested. You were once broken, misunderstood, and underestimated. Yet through it all, you rose. And now you stand untouchable, not because you shouted louder, not because you won some argument, but because you conquered the one thing they could never lay their hands on, your inner peace. You didn't destroy them. You never even needed to try. You simply outgrew the game and walked out of the arena. And that, in truth, is the most powerful move a Stoic warrior can ever make. So let me ask you this. Which chapter in your own life cut you the deepest? What moment made you realize you had outgrown the noise? That the shouting, the chaos, the manipulation no longer held any weight over you? Was it betrayal, heartbreak, or the simple exhaustion of being pulled in too many directions? Think about that moment, then share it. Drop your thoughts in the comments because I read every single one. Sometimes your story doesn't just free you, it gives light to someone else fighting the same silent battle. And if these words spoke to your soul, don't just watch and leave quietly. Subscribe to Life Through Stoicism. Because this isn't just a channel, it's not just content, it's a mindset, a lifestyle, a quiet revolution, like the video. Hit the notification bell. Share it with someone you know is ready to rise in silence, to reclaim their peace without needing to announce it to the world. And always remember this: you don't owe them a single word. The only thing you owe is to yourself, the next level. So keep rising, quietly, powerfully, relentlessly,